Okay, so we go back now to the brand new developments in the Hillary Clinton email scandal, and they are meaty, to say the least. To the testimony from Secretary Clinton's former chief of staff, they have worked together closely for many, many years, has just been released. Cheryl Mills essentially refused to answer any questions when it came to one significant individual, Brian Pagliano. He has received some sort of immunity, and he's the person who set up the home server. Okay, he is essential to this case when we look at it. And he's also been called a, quote, devastating witness by the account of a source of Catherine Herridge's. Judge Andrew Napolitano, Fox News senior judicial analyst, joins me now. Judge, a lot to get through here, so let's jump right into it.
Yes.
Cheryl Mills is an attorney.
Yes.
She walked in there with 7 attorneys.
Yes.
4 from the Justice and State Department, who are taxpayer paid for, we should point out,
right,
and 3 personal attorneys. And there were some areas that she has client privilege over with Hillary Clinton because she's Hillary Clinton's lawyer on those issues. Why is she so lawyered up?
Well, the State Department has an interest in the outcome of the case. The Justice Department has an interest in the outcome of the case. And she is portraying herself as not only the chief of staff and counselor to Mrs. Clinton, but Mrs. Clinton's lawyer while Mrs. Clinton was Secretary of State. If that is true and if it is credible, then there is what's known as the attorney-client privilege, meaning she cannot be compelled to reveal what Mrs. Clinton said to her or what she said to Mrs. Clinton. I don't know if this is a facade to frustrate the search for the truth or if this is a real attorney-client relationship that will have to be developed.
So Brian Pagliano, as I just said, is the person who set up the server. We know that he has reached some sort of immunity deal with the government on this. And as I said, Catherine Herridge has a source who says that his testimony is, quote, devastating, that he was a devastating witness. So you can see why her attorneys in this stage of the game, Judge, in the deposition, would be frequently telling her, no, do not answer that. Do not answer that. Do not
answer remember,
that.
This is not the criminal case. This is one of the 39 Freedom of Information Act cases filed against the State Department. In 2 of them, this one and another one, judges have ordered these depositions. So Mrs. Clinton and Ms. Mills' lawyers' greatest fears are that someone will say something in the civil case where the rules are more relaxed, which will then be taken and used against Mrs. Clinton in the FBI criminal investigation, which is just coming to an end. It was indeed frustrating for me reading this, imagining myself having been there, when her lawyer, a former federal prosecutor, Ms. Mills' lawyer, a former federal prosecutor, who, by the way, is representing all of Mrs. Clinton's aides, not just Ms. Mills, an unusual relationship, would not let her answer questions about Brian Pagliano. This is the key to the case. What did Mrs. Clinton tell Brian Pagliano she was trying to accomplish when she paid him $5,000 to migrate her public State Department email account, to which anybody could have emailed her, and her secret State Department email account, which contained state secrets? The latter, the movement of the secret account away from a government venue to a non-protected venue, is part of the conspiracy to commit espionage, to expose state secrets.
Right. It puts it in a vulnerable situation, and we also know that they had to shut the whole system down at one point because they believed that it was being hacked. Here's a quote from Cheryl Mills from the deposition, and I just want to put this up on the screen. The attorney says, okay, did they have access to the secretary's email account so that they could search her emails in response to the FOIA request? And she says, to my knowledge, they did not have access to her email. And she goes on to say, account, to my knowledge, the information where her email was, if there was a topic that would have been related, would have been in communications that would have either she would have had on paper, communications that she would have had in other materials that she received, or in exchanges that had an email with individuals in the state account. So explain what she's talking about here.
Okay, I don't think they thought through that answer before she said that, and I'll tell you why. This is devastating to Mrs. Clinton. I don't know if it's new to the FBI, but it's new to us. It means that Mrs. Clinton, Cheryl Mills, and Brian Pagliano, who's the next person to be deposed in the case, if he even answers any questions, engaged in a conspiracy to frustrate the operations of the State Department. One of its required operations is the maintenance of records and transparency and the availability of these records under the Freedom of Information Act. There is a statute that permits prosecutions when people conspire to frustrate the operations of the government. Look, we learned a lot about Mrs. Clinton, not the least of which is, Martha, she only used her BlackBerry. She did not use a laptop. She did not use a desktop. She did not use a tablet. She only used her BlackBerry. Her BlackBerry doesn't work on the 7th floor of the State Department. So for her to be email literate and connected with her employees in the State Department around the world, she either had to have emails read aloud to her or she had to leave her office and go to the 6th floor, all because she wouldn't accept a government-issued BlackBerry or a government laptop because she feared the Freedom of Information Act. She feared the president, the rest of the State Department, and the public knowing what she was doing.
And it sounds like Cheryl Mills' defense is, we just didn't really talk about it. This is what Mrs. Clinton wanted, essentially, and so we didn't really dig in. We should have thought about the fact that not all of this stuff would be captured in a place where it could be accessible to a FOIA request. We really should have thought about this. Is her lawyer, her longtime associate,
Correct.
who has been with her and worked in the government for many, many years.
You just gave a terrific summary of what Cheryl Mills said. I'll add one sentence to it, because this is what Mrs. Clinton did when she was a senator from New York. What? We now learn that she used the private server and the BlackBerry, not a congressional device, when she was senator from New York for 8 years.
All right. We're going to have more on this coming up in the 10 o'clock hour when we talk to